Welcome to a TAC camp and welcome to your leadership and training and junior MBA program. We are going to be very, very lucky today and very honored. We have Sarah Baldeo, who has done a TED Talk before, and she's going to introduce herself, but we are very excited to learn the top mastery of public speaking. And this is going to be part of our success training, our leadership training, and our public speaking training. And you are going to learn how to change your brain, how to learn, and how to be more successful in your life, okay? We want all of you to be leaders. We want all of you to be the top in everything that you do. And we want to see and celebrate your success for the rest of your lives and all of your future years. Very excited to have you guys here for camp. And we are going to now hand it over to Sarah, and she's going to start.
Thanks so much, Coach Alex. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to ask you a really blunt question. How many people here for March break would rather be at home on your PlayStation, on your screens? You can put your parents aren't here, so you could put your hand up. Okay, I think most people, you're putting up both your hands. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Sarah Baldeo. I have been a keynote speaker, a TED speaker for almost 20 years, which means I'm really old, but I'm also really good at what I do. And the only way I became good at what I was doing was I kept doing it, even when I would rather be doing something else. So I started out and I didn't want to be in science. I didn't want to be in technology. I told my parents that I wanted to be a singer. And they said, that's not a real job. You have to get something in science or technology or math. And so I decided I was going to become a neurosurgeon. But then I invested all this time and all this effort. I went to university. I finished my thesis work. And then I realized that that isn't what I wanted. I didn't want to spend the next 8 years of my life going to medical school. And so I decided that I was going to transition into technology. And then I ended up working at some big technology firms. I got into the C-suite. I was a CEO. I opened companies. I failed at some of those companies. Some of them were very successful. I was an actress. So last year I was in a commercial for all kinds of different brands. And you might have seen me on TV. I acted on Netflix and Amazon Prime. And the reason I share this with you is I kept trying different things every time I decided I wanted a new challenge. And so today I want to talk to you about this kind of idea of when you have something in your mind that you want to do, I completely understand that you'd probably rather be at home during March break, chilling out on the couch, playing Roblox or Minecraft or Call of Duty or whatever other games you're playing. And there's a reason for that. It's because your brain doesn't like change. I'm sure your coaches have told you change is good, change is positive, challenge yourself, but it's really normal because change is actually really unpleasant. So today I want to share a little bit with you about what happens in your brain as you're trying to learn something new this week and even when you go back to school. Now, some of the things your brain doesn't like, obviously change, people telling you what to do, things that seem unfamiliar or strange, when your teachers and your parents throw a million chores at you, when they give you unlimited homework, when you're pushed constantly to get the best grades and be the best and really have resilience. And these are all extremely unpleasant things that your brain is struggling with on a constant daily basis. Now, 100 years ago, don't worry, I won't go too much into history. 100 years ago, there was a scientist, and his name was Ivan Pavlov. And Ivan discovered this concept that there are these triggers in the brain, and they're called neural synapses. So every time something happens, there is a neuron in your brain, and it fires and it sends a signal to something else. So maybe you woke up this morning and you heard that there was an alarm clock, and the immediate thought that you had when the alarm clock went off was, oh, it's March break and my parents put me into a program and I don't want to do this. That was a stimuli. That was a trigger that happened to you. And so this scientist, Ivan Pavlov, he discovered this theory that there are synapses in the brain and they're constantly firing and they're sending messages to each other. They're sliding into DMs and they're kind of sending text messages. And so that's what's happening to you even right now as you're listening to me. Now, how many people have heard of the theory of 100 hours? No? Your coach has heard of it. So the concept is that with 100 hours, you will be better at anything that you do than 95% of the people around you. And so 100 hours really works out to 18 minutes a day. So anything that you want to do or anything that you want to be better than everybody else or 95% of the people around you, if you spent 18 minutes a day consistently and you got to 100 hours, you would be better than the majority of people around you. Now, I talked about these triggers in your brain and these messengers in your brain, and neurotransmitters are kind of like these chemical messengers. And whenever you're trying to learn something new, maybe this week you'll be learning about finance or you'll be learning about starting your own business, these are the 3 chemicals that are useful when you're thinking about what's happening in your brain. And science proves that when you know what's happening in your brain, you have better control of it. So the first one is dopamine. When you get your report card and you get good grades and maybe you get rewarded, this is the chemical that is pumping through your body. This is what happens when your parents tell you, if you just work on this many pages, you can have this many hours of screen time, or if you do this, you're going to get this. That's dopamine. Dopamine is all about positive feelings and reward, but it is very, very temporary, and your brain gets bored very easily. The second one is adrenaline. When you're playing sports, when you're competing against other people, adrenaline is just like coursing through your body. When you get nervous about something, maybe if you thought about getting up on this stage and giving a speech, adrenaline starts pumping through your body. You start sweating, your muscles get really tense, and the reason that happens is because you go into survival mode. So your body thinks there's a threat, there's something negative that's happening to me, and I need adrenaline, or sometimes it's called epinephrine, to be going through my body. And when you learn something new, your body tells you that it's stressful. Why? Because your neurons start activating, you need a lot of resources, you need to focus, and adrenaline spikes. And so when the adrenaline goes up in your body, there's a trigger in your brain, and your brain says, okay, what I just learned is really, really important. Adrenaline spike, that means I need to remember it. And the last neurotransmitter that's important when you're thinking about change and when you're thinking about learning is serotonin. And serotonin is important because when you're hungry, it controls your appetite, it controls sleep, and it also controls how fast you learn. And there's natural ways that you can increase serotonin. So if you go outside, if you're exposed to the sun, if you eat turkey, believe it or not, turkey has something called tryptophan in it, and it actually spikes up your serotonin when you eat a lot of fiber, when you eat a lot of fruits. And so these are the 3 transmitters, neurotransmitters, that are pumping in your body when you're learning something new. Now, when you think about your brain, how many people think that the brain has been around for 1 million years? What about 2 million years? What about 3 million years? Your brain has been around, the human brain has been around for 2.5 million years. And what's really strange about the brain is it hasn't changed that much from a core perspective in 2.5 million years. So there's 2 parts of your brain. The first one is this one you see here called the limbic system. So the limbic system is that old part of your brain. It's the part of your brain that you use when maybe you get into a fight. It's the part of your brain that was used thousands of years ago when maybe someone was in the jungle and they were coming up against a lion. That limbic system is the old ancient part of your brain. And in the past 2.5 million years, the brain has only grown by 30%. So that's adding 1/3 to your brain. That new part of your brain is your prefrontal cortex. It's the front part of your brain. That's why when you're riding a bike or you're doing anything, people say you need to protect that part of your brain. That's the part of your brain that you use when you're learning something new, when you have to make a decision, when you have to analyze something very complex. This is the new part of your brain. But what's interesting is when you're threatened, when you're stressed out, when you have anxiety, when you're pressured to get good grades, for example, your brain says, I'm under attack. I need to go into survival mode. I can't deal with this. And right away, it defaults to that limbic system, that old part of your brain. And so what's happened in the past almost 3 million years, our society has changed, technology has changed, there's ChatGPT, there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's Snapchat, there's so many new pieces of tech. But your brain, when it feels stressed out and when you're challenged to learn something new and you feel anxiety, it defaults. It's kind of like when you're resetting your PlayStation and your Nintendo and it just kind of defaults to the previous mode. That's what happens to your brain, and it still happens today. Now, when you think about your brain, the reason I'm sharing this with you is the more you're aware of what's happening in your brain, the more you can actually control it. You can train your brain to stop relying on that old, ancient limbic system that is outdated, and you can train it to use the new part of your brain. But that's where those 100 hours come into play. You have to keep practicing. Now, in your brain, there's 3 important parts. The first one is the amygdala. When you feel sad, when you feel happy, any feelings and emotions you have, that happens in your amygdala. And you can see it's part of that old operating system of your brain. The second part is your hippocampus. The hippocampus comes into play when you remember something. So a week from now, when you're no longer in March Break Camp and you're remembering what you learned in leadership and training, your hippocampus is what's going to be part of your memory center. But it's also part of that old ancient operating system. And so what you have is emotions and memories. And when you tie these two together, those are crucial parts of your learning journey and what you decide to do in the future of your life, but they're still part of the old part of your brain. That frontal cortex I talked about, that's the planning center. When you read something, when you're planning projects that you're going to deliver at this end of this week, when you're planning for the future, when you think about what you want to do with your life, how you want to make money, how you're going to buy a Ferrari, whatever you're going to do in your life, you depend on that planning center. And the planning center is part of the new part of your brain. And so the more you use the new part of your brain, and the more you kind of control your emotions and you understand your emotions, you build a bridge between the old part of your brain and the new part of your brain. And that's what's called neural training. So whatever age you are, you actually have an advantage. The younger you are, the more your brain can absorb, the faster it can absorb information. That's why you are all capable of learning technology faster than I am, faster than your parents, definitely faster than your grandparents, because your brain is still what's called neuroplastic. It still has the ability to change and grow and build new synapses. And when you think about leaving behind that old part of your brain that is controlled by survival and threats, you have the ability to start using logic and reason. And the younger you start doing this, the more success you have in life. Now, how many people, I want you to think about for a second the worst thing that has ever happened to you, the most stressful situation. And then I want you to think about the happiest memory that you ever had. Maybe it was a birthday, maybe you got an award, maybe you got a gift you wanted, maybe you got a ton of money for your birthday, something really great happened. What you'll notice is it's a lot easier to remember the negative memory. And it's not just because I asked you about it first. It's because your brain actually tricks you. Your brain likes to remember negative things in an easier fashion. And the reason for that is, again, thousands of years ago, if you were out hunting or you were out exploring, it was really important that you survive. It was really important that you didn't do something really dangerous. And your brain still functions this way. It's much easier to remember pain, negative memories, times where you were stressed out. This hormone right here, cortisol, that's something that's in your body. It's actually like a poison. When you're stressed out, this is filled up in your system. Whereas with happy memories and doing things that made you happy, historically, it wasn't that important to you staying alive. And so again, when you think about encoding memories and the way that you navigate life, as you're going through March break this week, really think about trying to have positive memories and positive experiences. Because again, you can train your brain not to focus on the negative. It's entirely within your control. So there's 3 things that I want you to remember. If you forget all the neurotransmitters and the different parts of the brain, you have a long future ahead of you. You can learn this in university. Remember that you have a brain that is a supercomputer. It can navigate absolutely anything that is thrown at you. If you have the knowledge of what your brain is capable of, and you apply it, and you use this in your everyday life, you can even use it when you're communicating with your friends. You can actually use this to get your way with your parents. Believe me, I have a child, and my child very cleverly uses all of this information to try to get his way. You can use this information about your brain to more effectively navigate your life and the decisions you're making. But you have to keep practicing, because those neurotransmitters and those neural synapses, the more you use them and the more they fire, the stronger they become. Everything I shared with you today is really about the fact that your brain has superpowers. Most of the time, we're asked in our life, in our work, in our school, to just go, get through the day, achieve something, and then be done with it. But when you think about everything that I shared with you, every single one of you has a superpower in your brain. And having this information at this point in your life gives you a huge advantage, believe me, over more than 90% of the population that doesn't have the opportunity to learn about neuroscience, to learn about change, and to learn about resilience. I hope you guys have a great March break, and thank you for listening to me this morning.